Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Whoa. Welcome. I want to first start by thanking everybody for coming out tonight. This is the first of many public discussions that we will have around the Takoma Junction project. Sometimes I think it's always helpful to go backwards before you go forwards, and so I think it was in October of last year city staff came before council and talked a little bit about an RFP or some sort of process to be able to look at opportunities as it relates to the city-owned parcel that's in the Junction. During that discussion, we talked about a variety of different methods that we could go through, and it was decided that we wanted to go through an RFP process. We talked a little bit about some of the criteria, some of the vision types of information that we wanted for the Junction as well during that conversation. We subsequently issued a solicitation in January of this past year. As a part of that, we had some site tours that were available for interested parties. We had an information session that happened in February of this past year. All, of course, leading to final proposals that were received in May of this year. As I stated before, the RFP had a number of different development goals and evaluation criteria. Some of those goals that were articulated were for proposers to act as a stimulus to the commercial district and to local businesses, to improve the aesthetic appeal of the district, and to be contextually sensitive and environmentally sustainable. Some of the evaluation criteria that was included in that solicitation included statements around overall vision and concept that they had for the Junction, their ability to implement an experience factor, have they done similar work before, and then finally some information around financing structure. Just want to give just a little bit of a brief orientation for folks in terms of the format for this evening, and we're going to try to keep it as much on time as possible. Overall, we have 4 proposals that will be presented this evening. We're going to give each presenter about 20 minutes or so to describe their proposal, and we're going to leave about 15 or 20 minutes left over for Q's and A's. Hopefully everybody's gotten a blue card. If anybody has not gotten a blue card or multiple blue cards, please just raise your hand and we'll have somebody come around. Those blue cards are very important in that is the mechanism that we're using to capture everybody's questions for tonight. If you hear nothing else from this boring little part that I am doing, hear this, that the intent for this evening is really to ask clarifying questions of the proposals. We understand that lots of people have a lot of interest in, and because this is Takoma Park, reaction in terms of what they see and what they don't see. We will have multiple opportunities for those kinds of comments to come. Tonight is really an opportunity, while we have the development proposers here, to really ask them some questions, clarifying questions around their proposals. We're going to be capturing all of the questions that are on your card, and we will be collecting that and providing that to the council and in a council package for this upcoming Monday's council meeting, which will be focused specifically around these Junction proposals, and really having the council have an opportunity also to collect and to synthesize some clarifying questions which will be asked back to the development partners. That's why tonight's session is very important, that we really structured as much as possible in terms of questions to the developers. For the 15 or 20 minutes that we're going to have for Q's and A's, we've got some microphones here. We're going to do it really first come, first serve. Totally understand we expect sort of a packed house this evening, and so we expect that we're not going to be able to get to everybody's question. That is why it is much more important that you write your question down on the blue card. Even if you get up here and you do ask a question, we need for you to write down your question on the blue card. There is a place to drop off the blue cards, and I'm going to look at... Perfect. So there's a place to drop off the cards. On that, you'll see you can ask it by developer, or you can ask it of all the developers, but that is the mechanism that we're using to make sure that we capture everybody's questions. All of the information that's going to be presented this evening from the developers' proposals is going to be available on the city website starting tomorrow. We also will be having a special layout in the upcoming newsletter that comes out that specifically describes these proposals. We also will be structuring over the next couple of months some additional opportunities for the public and for the council to interact on this important topic. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and open it. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to the first project. Again, just because of some of the time considerations we've got this evening, we're going to try as much as possible to stay on time, which means that we're going to have the Ability Project sort of come up here and maybe start to get set up. If you cannot get a seat, there is spillover seating, which is going to be out here in our immediate lobby, and we've got a television monitor actually out there as well, so that you can continue to catch the information. Again, this is also being recorded live, and this will be available on our website here shortly. They should still submit the blue card. We need the questions. We need the questions. Also, thank you for reminding me. Just one last comment. The same format for questions is going to be available on our website as well. So if you're not here this evening and you don't get a blue card, you're still going to be able to go online to the Takoma Park website, specifically our homepage site, which has a page for this solicitation, and you'll be able to submit your question electronically that way. So we want to make as many different opportunities as possible available for folks to ask questions. With that, I am going to turn it over to our first presenter this evening, which is going to be the Ability Project.
Good evening. I'm Gina Merritt. I'm waiting for the Ability Project to come up, or am I supposed to do that with the clicker? Technology. Yes. Oh, you still need to hear me?
Which one is yours?
Oh, sorry about that.
There's it, right?
Thank you. Okay, again, I'm Gina Merritt with the Ability Project. Can you all hear me well? We are pleased to be here tonight to present the Ability Project, which is the RFP proposal presented to the City of Takoma Park for the Takoma Junction lot. So tonight we're going to cover in our presentation, meeting the group in terms of our development team. We're going to talk about the proposal and the city's objectives, and our inclusive process, and then, of course, the Q&A period. I am Gina Merritt, again, with the Northern Real Estate Urban Ventures. I've basically been engaged by the Ability Project to be their developer. And I have extensive experience in development in this area, 19 years of industry experience. Here are some of my projects up on the board. The Nanny Helen, which was completed last May, which is fully leased up, a mixed-use development, as well as Charles Village Lofts that I actually did while working for another company, and then the Beacon Center, which is going to close in December, which is a 180,000 square foot mixed-use development, including office, retail, commercial, and an adaptive a renovation, really, of a church in the center of that project. And then I'm going to talk about Matt Herson, unless he wants to talk about himself. He's the president of the Ability Projects Board.
Okay. Stay right here.
Okay.
I am Matt Herson. I'm the president of the board of directors of the Ability Project. And just by way of background, this is a somewhat unusual project and proposal in that typically a developer, of which I am professionally, would identify a site, would control the site, and purchase it, develop it, find users, do the sales or the leasing. In this case, there's a group of users, the Ability Project being one, which we'll get into some detail, the Takoma Park Silver Spring Co-op, and the Takoma Children's School, that each are mission-driven cooperatives among themselves that we propose get together to develop the Takoma Junction site. We submitted our proposal at the end of May, and when we were shortlisted and thought this is this potentially serious endeavor, I reached out to Gina to enter the process to act as our developer. Gina and I met probably in the late 90s when we were both in Clark's real estate office. I think Gina was 9 at the time.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Just wanted to get that in. With the screen that's up, my quick background is I am the grandson of an Irish immigrant that settled in the Brookland neighborhood. In 1915, I moved his entire family, including my dad, to Noyes Drive in Silver Spring in 1938. Me and my two of my 3 brothers were born at what was then the Takoma Sanitarium. So we're very much local people. St. Bernadette's High School, Good Counsel, Georgetown. I went to Houston in 1980 to look for work, was hired by Hines, which is one of the largest private real estate firms in the world. And I've been with that company for nearly 20 years. Among the major projects that Hines is engaged in is the City Center project, the redevelopment of the old D.C. Convention Center site. We were also recently selected to redevelop the Walter Reed property. And our lead architect is going to be up talking to you with the second team. In addition to that, real estate development projects that I've led from Rockville to Minneapolis, from delivery in 2016 back to 1983. So that is my background. And the most relevant project to this that I've ever undertaken was I was recruited by a nonprofit in Rockville called the Community Services for Autistic Adults and Children. I am the father of a now 26-year-old who is with us tonight. Edward, can you raise your hand, buddy? There he is. Who was diagnosed with autism at Kennedy Krieger in 1990. In 97, I was recruited by this organization, who was then operating out of a decrepit surplus school property on Twin Brook Parkway, to develop a new headquarters building, which I undertook in 97. It was completed in 2008, a $7.5 million project with exactly the type of financing that we're proposing and the same methods and state programs that we intend to use for our project here in Takoma. Then you take over. Okay. In addition to my particular expertise in real estate, other board members, Sari Hornstein is here tonight, who is a board member of Ivy Mount. She's on our board. John Bogaski, raise your hand, who's the guy that did all of our graphics and formatting, and is also on the board of TLC and a founder of the Catherine Thomas School. Mady Carney is not here tonight, who is a founder of a special needs planning organization. The Scheinbergs, who are not here, are founders of a very popular listserv. We have about 80 families that are tracking this. We have a board of about 8, and we are organized and ready to go.
Okay, so we'll have Barbara. Do you want to talk 2 minutes or less about Perkins Eastman and the fact that you're an award-winning architect and all of the beautiful projects you do?
Perkins Eastman is one of the largest architects.
We'll get there.
Nationally and internationally. Some of the projects that you may be familiar with, Dunbar High School, which we just completed, which is LEED Platinum, School Without Walls, Stoddard Elementary School. A cute picture of the kids, that's Washington Latin, and we're the master architects for the Southwest Waterfront.
Okay, so let's talk about the site. The site, we're going to orient you a little bit for our proposal. The larger site being 38,000 square feet of mixed-use development fronting Carroll, and the R60 site that fronts Columbia is zoned R60, and you can do educational use by special exception. Then we're going to have Barbara come up and talk about the details for the proposal. Here, you got this.
Clicker. So let me just say first, this is one of the most inclusive, community-facing, flexible projects I have ever worked on, which is really exciting for an architect. That's not our usual MO, but to be involved with a group of mission-driven organizations in a very important community active neighborhood like Takoma Park, I think is really exciting. So what we're going to show you are concept diagrams that address some of the big issues and resolve some of the important, outstanding issues like parking and where you enter the site, but we're extremely flexible, and we're really looking forward to working with the community and doing something that's really good for these three groups and the whole community and the local businesses. So just to orient you onto the site, if I can get the clickery thing to work.
No, that's the, are you trying to make it go forward, or you're trying to do the red
No,
dot?
I'm trying to do a red dot.
You do the red dot.
Okay. So along Carroll Avenue, the bulk of the building is facing Carroll Avenue to create and continue the pedestrian edge. The entrance to the parking is where the current entrance to the parking is, away from the traffic intersection here. So as a resident, what you'll see people walking along Carroll Avenue instead of a parking lot that's kind of like the missing teeth between a group of buildings. If you're a resident, you'll enter here. If you're a member of the Ability Project or want to use the community space, you'll enter here. There's a coffee shop here that the Ability Project and the co-op are talking about doing together. There's a 12,000 square foot addition for the co-op, and there is a drop-off here for the preschool.
Correction. There's a 5,000 square foot addition that brings the total for the co-op to 12.
Sorry. It's a 5,000 square foot addition to the co-op, which brings their total square footage to 12,000 square feet. So one of the things that we've done is met with the co-op to talk about this process and bring them into this project as one of our members. So there's a drop-off for the preschool that keeps the traffic again on Carroll Avenue. There's kind of a very cool walkway, safe but elevated through the trees, to the Takoma Children's School here. The Children's School is a special exception in the R6 zone. They need to apply for the special exception, but it would be a very residential quality building against the Columbia Avenue, this residential area, but without traffic. Sorry.
There you go.
Second floor, this is a public area, community program area for the Ability Project, but would also be available to the community. There is a residential. There's 9,000 square feet of residential. Whether it's 5 units or 9 units, that's still up for grabs. There is a large terrace area that would also be available for the community gardens, and that kind of thing. Again, this is a concept diagram. What we're trying to show is that it would be a combination of 2-story and 1-story, 2-story space massing, appropriate to the scale of Takoma Park, a reasonable rhythm. There would be activity with the coffee shop here, the entrance here to the Ability Project, and here the entrance to the residential area. So there would be things going along very much like the rhythm of Takoma Park streets. This is again, a diagram of the coffee shop, which would be adjacent and contiguous, potentially, with the co-op. There's some discussion about the co-op running it and the Ability Project people staffing it. But we're looking at that kind of context. Brick, natural materials. The whole concept here is to be at least LEED silver. We like to press that as far as we can go and incorporate current stormwater management, et cetera, kind of ideas. Again, we just talked about the coffee shop, which would be contiguous with the co-op. So we have met with the co-op, and it's important to us to integrate the co-op's needs into our overall plan. So this is the extension of the co-op, contiguous with the existing co-op. They would be able to use some of the parking. It would also move the loading off the street so you didn't see the loading in the dumpsters. This is the bridge to the Takoma Children's School. And it's very important to us that as we build the school in here, that we preserve all the trees and all this kind of beautiful tree canopy, because that's really kind of critical to making this work. Right, this is the Takoma Children's School. Currently, it's less than beautiful, less than inspiring, less than exciting if you were a child or a parent dropping off your child, for me at least. So we envisioned something, this is in the Kentlands, but this is something much more residential in scale, much more cheerful and uplifting. Again, this is the residential area. This is the assembly and program area for the Ability Project. It would be connected to the coffee shop and would be open, as we imagine it, for community events.
So, the Ability Project. What is the Ability Project? I'm going to go fast. The Ability Project was inspired by a school that Edward attended when he was 19 years old, the Chapel Haven School in New Haven, Connecticut. It's a post-secondary program, and they have 30 students in the dorm building, is the apartment building on the right. And every year, 10 graduate, and 7 or 8 out of 10 elect to voluntarily reside within walking distance of the school. And the school has turned into a center for activities, social life, cultural fellowship for adults with developmental disabilities that live within walking distance of the school. This was Edward's probably favorite place in the school. That's the activities sign up, which was in the ground floor of the dorm building. So a trip to the shore, camping with the Boy Scouts, Best Buddies baseball game. He'd sign up for activities every weekend. We'd get a bill, $30, $50. It was wonderful. He came home. He has none of that. He's at home. He has a day program at 3:30. He's in the basement. He's playing video games. No friends, no social life. It was my commitment when he returned to this area that we would endeavor to recreate this very special community that exists in New Haven in a wonderful pedestrian community in this area, which we hope will be Takoma Park. Next. Sorry.
Sorry.
I have 3 sheets of paper and I have 30 seconds, so I'm going to go fast. In our opinion, Takoma Park exemplifies the values that animate the Ability Project. Takoma Park's distinctive community celebrates individuals, diversity, community. The lodge will provide a range of opportunities for adults with disabilities at the same time that it invites participation from the Takoma Park community. People with disabilities, people without disabilities, students, families, older people who are aging in place, scouts, guides. The list goes on. That's just an idea of the kind of partnership that we hope to generate by the presence of the Ability Project here. The lodge will be a magnet for anyone looking for a community of like-minded individuals for stimulation, fun. Its purpose is limited only by the energy and the imagination of its participants. But my sense of Takoma Park is that there is no shortage of energy or imagination. So I need to say, and I need to emphasize, that Takoma Park's vibrant community was the compelling factor in our decision to pursue the opportunity to develop the Takoma Junction site. We anticipate that the presence of this lodge will enlarge, support, and nurture your existing vibrant community. That's it in 30 seconds. We'll take questions later. Thank you.
Okay, so we threw the questions up from the city of Takoma Park so we could make sure we address them.
We're addressing all of the city's goals.
Exactly. And so one of the questions addressed incorporation of adjoining businesses. And we're obviously doing that with by supporting the expansion of TPSS Co-op. We're bringing the Takoma Children's School from where it is now in an older, almost dilapidated. I'm sorry. We're bringing Takoma Children's School to this site, allowing them to expand from hopefully 45 kids to 60 kids, enabling more services to be provided to the community. And the project that we're proposing is fully feasible right now with the current zoning in place and the properties that the city has offered. Our uses also provide activity both day and evening. It's not like perhaps there's too much residential and too little commercial, or commercial that only serves evening uses, or retail. We think if the first floor were only retail, we also might be challenged to create a vibrant a project, because there's already retail suffering across the street. So what needs to happen at this site is activities both day and in the evening, which our proposal achieves. And then we plan to reach out to the additional adjoining businesses, if we are selected, to see how we might work in partnership with them. So as far as the public amenities, allowing the co-op to expand, which we know Takoma loves the co-op, creating a community coffee shop, which will be a partnership between the Ability Project and the co-op, we think will be an awesome amenity for the community. Using the terrace and the event spaces on the first floor to share in the community in terms of using it for art events or theater events or whatever events you might have in mind. Again, bringing the children's school there, allowing them to expand and serve more children in the community, more families. And then the parking. Our uses actually don't require a lot of parking. And so the parking that's there will be available to the co-op and to the adjacent businesses. And then again, the daytime invigoration by the uses during the day and the evening really will create a lot of pedestrian traffic, which will help the businesses across the street. Okay. Finally, the community inclusion and engagement process. We think we are very experienced, actually, in community engagement process. We have to do that as architects and developers for all the projects we do. And that will include the charrette process, which is a design process that's a collaborative process with the community. We want to establish a community advisory committee to have your input on an ongoing basis during construction and after the building is complete. And then, of course, our community outreach strategy will include email blasts, Facebook, project websites, and then for those of you who still like snail mail, we'll do that too and put newsletters in the mail. This is just to show you how engaged we are. We've already talked to the co-op and the children's school, and based on our initial proposal, have changed that to meet their needs. But, of course, that's not the end, because we want to talk to all of you to get your input to further refine our design. That's it for us. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have about 10, 15 minutes for questions. Yeah, and I think you guys can just answer questions straight from there, actually. Again, we need everybody to write down their questions, whether or not they ask it here or not, on that blue piece of paper and deposit it either on the side or in the back. But we also, and right here, Roz has additional blue forms for people. And we have the microphones open, so if anybody would like to come up, they can ask questions. And again, trying to target these questions specifically to the proposals that were presented. Thanks.
Hi. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation. I really admire the ability project component to it, but I have to say I'm disappointed, because my name is Taba Wasafa. Since 2011, I've been promoting a community cafe that aspires to give 50% of the profit back to the community, that aspires to create a living wage training for women and youth. My name is Taba Wasafa. If you had Googled Takoma Park and Coffee, you'd have seen the tremendous amount of time we've done to promote our social.
I apologize. I'd like if you can ask a question. That'd be good.
You've missed out. So for me, your program does not reach out to me. It disenables my dream. So you haven't done the outreach plan that you have.
Tababo, you've got to have a question.
Okay.
Yes, please.
How do we connect your vision to what's percolating on the ground? Because it's not addressing my.
How about if I ask a
desire.
question for you? Could we include a community cafe in our plan? And it's something that we do have a coffee shop envision. We've discussed with the co-op the notion that we would have perhaps the lounge area. They would have the coffee area. So this is all can be part of the mix that we would welcome inquiries like that. This is, as I said, this is not, we're not charging rent. It's a mission-driven to the extent, especially if it could involve training activities for our developmentally disabled population. It's a huge interest of ours.
Yeah, it's still
Yep.
wide open for discussion, absolutely.
One thing, just before we go to our next question, all of the answers that the participants give, again, it's great that they're providing the feedback real time. We are also going to be asking, again, all of these questions in written form to the developers, so they will have an opportunity to augment their responses. So this will not be the only time that they respond to something. I'm going to go over on this side.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions that I think a lot of people on my street are going to have. I live on Sycamore Avenue, and already that I go up that intersection past the co-op to go to work, and that intersection is a bottleneck. There's traffic coming from different directions. There's been all sorts of problems with the signals, and I'm envisioning the school, the drop-off time and the pickup time, what that's going to be like, and wondering what provisions you would make for that. And I'm also curious about the parking that's now on the Sycamore side, if that's going to stay or if that would go. But in general, just how traffic's going to move around there, because it is an issue.
Well, we have made some accommodations for parking. I don't know if we can show the slide now, but we do have a pickup and drop off. The school, the school's hours are 8 to 6, so we expect drop off hopefully between 7:30 and 8. We also have the loading of the co-op that we think will happen between 6 and 8. So we're going to make some accommodation to hopefully manipulate that so that there's a 30-minute window for the drop-off where there won't be any loading for the co-op. And so we think with that, we should be able to achieve not having congestion basically in that parking lot and in that area by just timing it and managing it.
I would add, we've been led to believe that that the co-op will retain its existing parking lot.
On the Sycamore
On
side.
Sycamore side.
Sure.
And I would add that we know that little, it's called the Junction because it's a junction, and it's kind of a traffic mess. And because I have been visiting now for months and just getting in and out of the parking lot, right in, right out, turn left, it's complicated. And any use on that site is going to take a lot of
That's right.
traffic study
That's
to
right.
get it done. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for being first, because you never get an easy ride. And the ability to put everything of what you've listed is questionable in my mind. It's a lot of things. The egress to the school ground floor emergency, the pick off, the drop off, the coordination of the intersections, and the parking. But one other question I have is, why did you not mention the caliber of jobs that you would be bringing into this area? Because that is different than just a retail scenario, and it is a point I think worth mentioning. But
Sorry, sir, is that your question?
well, that's one of them.
Okay.
The question is, why not bring that up? And the other is to echo the previous woman's concerns. I don't think that you have the space for semis that you show in your drawing, or do you have the space is the question, and do you have the adequacy, or can you get that intersection to coordinate? These are questions that you'll have to answer in order to have that school in addition to everything else you're reaching.
Thank you, sir.
Well, in terms of jobs, yes, we think we will be able to add a significant number of jobs, certainly permanently with the co-op expansion, allowing them to expand. The Ability Project being a commercial use during the day will have daytime jobs, and obviously the children's school moving to the site and expanding to 45 children means they need more staff. So there will definitely be job opportunities there, both through construction and permanent. In terms of the balance of the question, Matt?
The parking, it was actually Gina who said, if we win this and we get through it, when you look back, you'll find that 90% of the time you spent on it was on parking, because it's a challenge. And when we were on the phone today looking at the semi, the diagram with a semi in it, it obviously can't get in if those parking spaces are filled. Now, when we met with Marilyn Berger at the co-op, she said it's 6 to 8 a.m., so the notion was that there are going to be cones put out there so that certain parking spaces can't be occupied while the truck is coming and going. When the pickup and drop off of the kids, there's certain, which is early and late, there's a couple of parking spaces that can't be occupied. But I think the days of having kind of unobstructed access for cars is kind of over. The cars have got to take a step back, make space for people. So it's a lot that's going to need a lot of study going in, and it's going to need a lot of management.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your presentation. I know there's a lot of work involved in this, and there's a lot of program on this site, and it's not an easy site. And I know this is just the beginning. And unfortunately, I can't see other presentations tonight, but I will get right into a specific, and that is, I think the street activation is going to be really important for this project and what that streetscape experience is like. These are very admirable programs which you're bringing here, but I think for those who live within a block of this building, it's going to be our experience 24/7 as well. So I'd encourage you and all the developers to really think about and show us through your presentations of what it's going to be like to experience walking by your building, and think of what the best uses are for what's on the street. So I sort of question, I'm sure you've been through this, the co-op remains where it is, or does it come back on the sidewalk? Because right now the majority of the building is on the parking lot. And, do you really want admin spaces on the sidewalk, or do you want them more to the back? You don't have to answer that right now, but I would hope that when I walk up to the street from my house, that I will be able to engage in this building, this project, in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to answer, or do you want to move on?
That was it, yeah.
I think that was a comment.
We look forward to working with you.
Exactly right.
Yeah, also thank you for the proposal. I think it looks really strong based on the mixed use. For all of these proposals, my main concern is both the height and the kind of how does it fit within the local community, but also housing units, which weren't mentioned in the RFP at all, and it seems like that was one of the main selection criteria for all the proposals. So I'll ask this in the blue card for everyone, but for yours in particular, it seems like the Ability Project has a lean towards working with adults, specifically with developmental disabilities. Do you envision the housing units being for adults with developmental disabilities and providing them that access? And if not, how much will those units actually cost and for people looking to move in?
I'll answer the first half, and that is that the residential is there to be residential that is for the community. It's not intended for members of the Ability Project. That I don't expect that my son would live in the community, and he'd be eligible to buy a unit, I suppose, but it's not housing for people with disabilities.
Thank you.
So, the follow-up question was how much will those units actually cost? Because in my opinion, there's too many luxury townhouses that are not really supporting any affordable living in the community.
Only if you all have information. I think it's at this point, because a lot of these proposals are still preliminary and we're still going to go back and forth. I think that may be a question that's better answered as a part of, if you write it down on the card, we can get it something a little bit more official.
Details. Yeah.
Sir.
Hey, I was just wondering if you're hoping or planning to include programming for people on the more profound end of the developmental spectrum, because there's not much of it within a great distance.
I've been pursuing this now for probably almost 4 years, and meeting with lots of parents. We are not a program. We're an association. We're a cooperative of families with family members with disabilities. We expect that there'll be services provided by established service providers to the extent families have state funding for programs. They have state funding. To the extent they can pay for them privately, they pay for them privately. But we are not a disability program. We would love to have your family involved.
So it's like we join the co-op and then we help. Oh, that's exciting sounding.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the point.
How do I get on your mailing list?
This is the point about the imagination.
Cool.
If there is a need, if there's an imagined program, if there's an excursion that sounds like it could incorporate, A and B and D and F as well, then why not? And it's really a creative process, and it's a partnership. And we're open to everything, and anybody who's interested in participating in this kind of new inclusive community.
So if any of us...
I apologize. I just want to make sure we've got a couple of other people behind you. You've asked a few questions.
Just want to make sure. So we just email somebody on your website? How do those in the audience who want to get in?
I'm going to be sticking around. Find me.
Leave me your email on the notepad. We'll contact you.
Thanks.
Not that you have an extra hand there.
Good.
So thank you. And I would say this to me really exciting to build this kind of community here. I was wondering just if you could say a little more about the Ability Project in the sense of what's the long-term financial sustainability of a project like this insofar as it's not a programming venture, but you're going to bring in programming. And so how will this go into the future in terms of financing the ability part of it?
One thing, we were told that we're not here to talk about financing. We're here to
Correct.
talk about architecture and so forth. But what I could do, among other reasons, my oldest son, Greg, who's waking up, that's the future of the Ability Project, right? The intent of this thing is that it survives all of us parents. And it's something that ownership is essential. We don't sign a 5-year lease. That obviously doesn't make any sense at all. But to find a permanent home and be engaged in the operation and involve our children and our adult, so-called cognitively normal children, although that's debatable sometimes. And then it is handed off to them in the future.
Great, very cool.
Hi, thank you very much. And as former General Counsel of the Autism Society, I thank you for your innovative thought process. I know finance, I just learned, was not an issue. I was curious about the increase to taxes in the community, the tax base itself, where you foresee that. I think that should be part of your proposal. I do think the traffic issue was not addressed adequately, and I was wondering if you engaged the auto shop next door.
The answer is, I think those were comments, but the one question, engaging the auto store next door, we did not. And the reason that we did not is that we did not believe that by May 28th that we'd be able to make a definitive deal. And we did not want to submit a proposal that we could not deliver on. So the city had asked us to work with the co-op, which we did. They introduced us to the Takoma Children's School. They've been brought into the program. If we're selected, we look, one of the first calls that we make is to neighboring property owners to see if there's a basis for incorporating their properties into our proposal. The auto repair, Healy Masters, we had extensive discussions about does it make sense to talk to them in advance of the proposal, and the answer was no, that we wouldn't have anything definitive by May 28th.
I think, unfortunately, we're going to have just one more question.
So, based on the question that came earlier, I was left a little confused. When you went through your presentation, I thought you were saying that the housing that was on the site would be like dorms for your participants. But then what I heard is that this is actually going to be market rate housing.
The confusion is probably, as I'm flipping through slides, the Chapel Haven School in New Haven, Connecticut, which was the inspiration for this, is a school that has a dorm building. But this is not a school. There are no dorms. The residences are there simply because the city asked for a mixed-use proposal. The zoning permits a third of the site to be developed as residences and nothing else, which is why we've included residences. But we expect that it will be market-based, available,
so
market-wide. Right.
5 to 9.
It's 9,000 square feet. And
is it for sale or rental?
We don't know yet. And it could be 9 1,000-foot units, or it could be 2 4,500-foot units. We don't. It's just defined in the zoning ordinance by the floor area.
I would encourage, again, these are the preliminary proposals. If there are specific questions that you all have, please write those things down on the blue papers, and we'll be able to do that.
And I want to make one little closing statement. We very much want to be engaged with the community. A member of our board, Coach G, Gary Weinstein, raise your hand, Gary, longtime member of the community, is going to lead our liaison effort with the community. His son, Zach, we hope is going to be part of our membership. And I will be sticking around the rest of the night if you have any questions.
Ability Project, thank you very much. We're going to try for a smooth and quick transition, which will probably not happen, between the previous proposal and our next presenter, which is Community 3 Development. If I can ask those folks to come on up here. We also, again, if we do have overflow seating outside in our lobby area, and we have a television that is showing this as well. So if you can't find a seat, please be comfortable.
You want to sit down here, or you want to be up here? Okay. Do good thing, Harmony. Yeah.
Do you guys want to stand up here? Sorry, I'm going to get out of the way. Just get in the way.
You're third, right? Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
John.
There you go.
Ready? Okay. Thank you for having us. My name is Grant Epstein, and I'm the president of Community 3 Development. I'm here with John Torty and Tom Gallus. We are here today to, which one's the clicker button?
Oh, not
This one?
Yeah.
This one?
I think, to the right, maybe.
There we go.
There you go.
We're here today to share a little bit about our team. We're going to talk a little bit about what we think making great places is all about. And we're going to describe what we think our process going forward is, knowing that it's going to evolve and change as we start to work together with you. Our firm is a small boutique development company. Our work is transformative, whether it's from a renovation of a existing house that's been dilapidated, or contextual urban infill in downtown Washington. We try to fill the void that's left by sites that are empty or sites that have gone into disrepair. This project right here is the Schaefer. It's in Mount Pleasant. We just won an award from Delta Associates for the best mid-Atlantic boutique condominium. This was an old building that fell into disrepair, and we restored it, turned it into multifamily, used period-appropriate details, and really took the existing architecture and returned it to its prominence. This is a church that's on Capitol Hill that was also in disrepair and not being used. We returned the church to a useful life so that it could be maintained for the next 100 years. But while doing that, we kept the inside looking like a church, kept the timber beams, stained glass windows, and really took an approach that was holistic into its rehab and its renovation and how it responded to the character of the neighborhood. We recently won an award for this one from the D.C. Historic Preservation Group. This is our restaurant downtown. This is Tally, which has been part of the revitalization of the Shaw neighborhood. This is a American bistro, place similar to what we envision happening here on the street at Takoma Junction. This actually just won a national award for Top 100 Neighborhood Gems, and hoping to bring something like this to this site to invigorate the street and a place where we can all go and congregate. Like I said, we also do big projects. This on the right side is at the corner of 11M in Washington, D.C. It's a combination of a 6-story and 9-story building that wraps around an existing building that's on the corner. This is meant to try to be delicate about the massing in its relationship to its context into the two streets and the corner building that it fronts. We also have a number of other projects downtown that are mixed use. And I'll turn it over to John to talk about our vision.
Give me instructions.
It's this one right there.
Okay. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about the architecture and the site as we see it. First and foremost, whenever we come and approach a site, we try to look for places to connect to, and we try to find the vision the place is already started, instead of bringing and importing a vision from outside. And this is an important part about contextual architecture, which is essentially what our firm does. We've been in Montgomery County for 60 years, and we have over 90, it's either 92 or 93 LEED Platinum certificates of buildings and houses that we've designed. And we're very proud of that. The idea about coming to this site at the Junction is very much an idea about how big buildings or buildings that are connected to one another and smaller buildings that are individual could live well in the same kind of neighborhood, and most importantly relate to the human scale, human beings, and how they are used. The photographs of similar kinds of places that are mixed use, that live in the day and live in the evening, are important. The notion of how the quality of the materials, how the architecture, how the scale of the buildings all relate to the human fabric, and how that fabric is connected to not only people but the rest of the neighborhood, and the rest of the neighborhood's buildings are very, very important to us. This is a town that is famous for its craftsman architecture, and the craftsman architecture is an architecture that's built by hand, and the kind of look that we are envisioning for this project is exactly that. Is a project that human scaled and an architecture that is developed and made by hand. Some of the work that we have done in the area that you may have seen, maybe not, on the left is Bethesda Row, that the street, the pedestrian street that we put through the block that our doing, and in the upper right is a Starbucks coffee, but don't blame me. Anyway, I live in a neighborhood with 3 Starbucks coffees, and I always go to the Java Hut down the street. But this is a 3-story building made out of wood that has housing on the top 2 floors and shops on the first floor. It happens to be at Fort Belvoir. It's the first mixed-use building on any military reservation nationwide, and we started that trend with them. And lastly, that's the Social Safeway in Georgetown. That's the new Social Safeway in Georgetown after we brought it up to the street to make it a more urban-friendly Social Safeway. So we're very, very proud of that. Getting to the good stuff. Your site. If this works. So there we go. So we have Carroll coming up, turning and going off, Philadelphia coming down, the fire station, the group of more or less attached shops, the attached and detached coming by, a connection between the Junction and downtown Takoma Park of a beautiful residential street and residential scale. Our site, the co-op, everybody knows where we are, right? And so when we put our building on the site, we see that coming up from Carroll Avenue, there's an opportunity for a signature, if you will, something good to look at as you come up the street and ending in the visual axis. You will also see the single house on Columbia Street or Avenue. I'm not sure. Columbia Avenue. Sorry. Thank you. That we're intending to put on that site, and you could see that and you'll see in more detail in a minute, the streetscape, a connection with the co-op, both on the streetscape and possibly in the building, a drive that consistent with the entry in the parking lot now that we're anticipating go downhill, and we're parking in the back and then under this building. More detail to come. One other slide. If, in fact, as the Junction develops, if it wants to develop, in the future, we think there's opportunities for that to fill in. But I just want to say that I grew up in a neighborhood with an automobile repair shop only 6 doors down from me, and it was just fine. So the kind of idiosyncratic mix that exists here, I think, is a good thing, and maybe not necessarily do we all have to go after it to end it. But it's. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for the question. Yes, the green are the existing houses. The terracotta are the existing. I'll go back. Boom. That's existing. Okay. The terracotta is the existing stores, and the purple is a crummy color for a beautiful fire station. Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. Good. So our building, possible more stuff, and to take a look at a little bit more detail at what we are proposing. And again, we think this proposal is the beginning of a bigger conversation. Everybody's going to tell you that. I think you can talk to many of our clients. We're not afraid to design in the daylight with the community, and neither is our client, so it's, as Martha Stewart would say, a good thing. So we have our proposal. Our proposal is a mixed-use building on the street level. It shows retail. It shows the potential of a connection through to the co-op. The red equals 8,500 square feet, and so the co-op could use all of it, none of it, some of it, as the future negotiations will evolve. The beige portion in the back is the entry to apartments above. The gray turn piece is that piece on access with Carroll Avenue as you come up the hill and see something hopefully beautiful. It will be beautiful, I guarantee you.
The street by the edge of the.
Thank you. This is Tom Gallis. He adds in everything I forget, and that's why we're such good partners. So the other very important thing is the streetscape. So we're picking up from the edge of the co-op and making our building coplanar with that, so that there's a larger sidewalk area at the northern end of the project, using the tower to transition, and then in the southern end, it's a more traditional scaled streetscape, not unlike the streetscape that you see around Bethesda Row, to just use a place that I think we all know. So this has plenty of room for capital bike share racks, plenty of room for walking, plenty of room for a cafe zone, a larger area for seating out here. The co-op already has some seating there, so we think we're trying to say we know we're going to make a good neighbor. If in fact this is our site here, this is the fire station here. There's a couple of auto uses. You have to know that Austin Healey's was my dream car my entire life. Wow. And so why wouldn't anybody want to live on a block with an Austin Healey? Anyway, so what we're really saying here is, as if these develop, we are very much in favor of connecting the parking through the backyard so that there's not another curb cut onto the street, and everybody could be a good neighbor. This is a bigger ensemble. This is the first floor plan that we showed you before, the entrance down the hill. We would be excavating the back of the site, approximately 8 feet, to get the parking level under this parking lot, under the building. But as you all know, there's a very precipitous incline at the back edge of the lot currently, and we'll be making that incline a lot less precipitous, if that's the right word. The initial sketch for the elevation essentially has a retail base. The co-op ends here or starts here. We have a one-story retail portion here. Retail continues under to our drive. We have 2 floors of apartments above it, and the tower element that you could see coming up Carroll Avenue. Down below, there's parking along the back like there is now, parking along the front, and some parking in between under the building. Upstairs, there's 2 floors of housing and this is going off the screen. There's a one-story section of the building that we would like to put the possibility of an outdoor eating for a restaurant that exists below. So we think that'd be a nice kind of perch to have outside dining in the good weather months that we have here in Washington. And these show about 18 units. These are smaller units. This building is made out of by hand, out of wood, as I said, so that the construction costs are not going to be high. The quality is going to look very high, like that Fort Belvoir building I showed you. And it'll allow us to keep the cost of the housing down, bottom line. And I would like anybody to go into our website, www.tortigallis.com, look at any of our work here or anywhere around the country, and you can see the quality of the residential work that we do. So from the street, we have a very active streetscape. We have shops. We have a possible extension of the co-op. We have, as Grant said, my guess is wind up with the co-op, maybe, hopefully, and a small restaurant or 2, plus 2 levels of housing. A little view of the Columbia Avenue single house on the single lot down at the bottom of the hill. Just basically want to be a friend of all the other houses on the block. I think I'm done, Tommy.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the process. What John just presented was a sort of a first concept without engaging the community in the vision. And our firm, Torti Gallis and Partners, you had asked, what's the name of the firm, is right in downtown Silver Spring. It's been in Silver Spring for the entire 60 years. And our experience and our work is about creating context and, as John said, connecting what's there with what could be there even in the future. I think our work in working with communities and working with municipalities and government agencies is sterling in its history, and we see a community process that's going to involve obviously the county, the city, all the business owners, and obviously most importantly the residents. And through that, we believe this process has to start by listening. And so we look forward to engaging you in the process so that together we can create a community project that won't succeed if the community doesn't support it. We understand that, and we feel that as a partner in the community, we're looking to create win-win situations. There are many clients of ours here in the room, and you can ask them. That's what we believe. So, in essence, we will work with the community to craft the process that will engage you in the community workshop or public roundtable. But again, this is really just the beginning. And I think Grant will finish.
So just to come full circle, you know, our plan here is to create a great place. It's to create a place that you guys want to be. It's a place like you saw in the rendering there, where people can enjoy themselves outside, can interact, can create a place where it's not just the intersection of all these streets, but it's the center of a neighborhood. Just to touch on the way this vision achieves the city goals that we were told, is really that it is the catalyst for the placemaking that will happen at the junction. It has the contextual sensitivity by using the architecture that's locally appropriate, that is created by hand, that is sensitive to the human scale, that can adapt and can accept the adjacent properties either inside of it or as the adjacent properties start to redevelop, this project can expand. There's a mix of uses here and the creation of a continuous pedestrian sidewalk and a cafe zone that can also continue along the south to give greater connectivity towards the metro station. Finally, this project, we intend it to be very environmentally sustainable. It has a green roof on it. I think we're about to start our third green roof building right now. And we would look for at least making the LEED Silver equivalent rating. So why choose us? We think that we come up with creative solutions for things. We think that there is a lot of opportunity here at the Junction, and we can bring that kind of collaborative effort here to you and join in with you on this project. We have a proven, sensitive urban infill practice. This is exactly what we do. We always look forward to working with the community and making the plan evolve as we move forward. We primarily want to be your partner because this site will only be as good if you want to be there. So with that, I thank you.
Again, just for those folks who came in late, microphones are available. If you've got a blue card, we want to make sure you write down all of your questions, even if you do ask it at the microphone on the blue card. And again, the intent of this is to ask clarifying questions of these proposals while we have these developers here.
Hi. My question is, do you envision your project, both the residential and commercial space, to be accessible to working class people in Takoma Park?
Yes. Yes. I have no other way to answer that besides yes.
Do you have any more?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I know you want to answer this.
No, I don't. Well, no. I think that I tried to talk a little bit about that when I talked about the architecture. I think it's been the history of our firm and our developers and our history of working with Grant that we get the most out of every dollar he has or every dollar he lets us spend. So we have a theory here that we're going to make this building look really, really great and cost very little. And that, in the end, makes the arithmetic come out to be less for the leaseholders, rent holders, owners of the building.
Thank you.
Could you go back to your original site plan so I can ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
And thank you.
Here, can you get back up?
Uh-oh, I missed it.
Oh, jeez. Darn it. Foiled. I'll ask another question.
Well, water and mountains.
That's Takoma Park.
It's already there in the back. Okay. Somehow it's in there in the back.
Well, so as you're getting that up, I love the idea about the local architecture. I live right 5 houses away from there and have lived through 30 years of talk about development in the Junction. And I think this is the closest it's gotten to sort of reality. A couple questions. It wasn't clear when sounds like you're doing 3 stories of development for a total of 50 feet. Is that 50 feet or 70 feet?
11, 11, 22, and 20, less than 50.
Okay, and then
I would say more like 40 to 45 feet.
And so then you're going down 8 feet into the ground to dig, but you're not. So obviously that will come back off the top of the hill, the steep hill on Columbia. But then you're not having any development on the parcel with all the trees other than at the bottom of Columbia where the house is.
Yes,
Is that
correct.
correct? And so is your plan, how big a house will that be? How many square feet?
It'll be the average size of the houses that are in that neighborhood.
Well, so we vary, so.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, 2 stories right now?
So I think, again, as much detail as you can
Okay.
provide. If you can't, just make sure you write that question down so we can
Okay, and
make sure we
then,
get it.
so in general, the rest of that lot, I was glad to see it wasn't all condos.
There's woods.
There's wood, so your plan is to try to keep that or improve it for woods. Okay,
Correct.
I think that's what many of us are most concerned on Sycamore, other than the other major elephant in the room is traffic. And not only working with the city, but having to work with the state. I mean, the Takoma Park can guarantee you some things, but East-West Highway is a state road, so, but I'm sure you know that, having worked in Bethesda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is that, I think the one thing about the traffic is that this will be primarily residential, and we envision most of the retail being accessed from walking from the community, not a car-centric sort of set of retail uses.
And I'll say that the way you try to achieve that is by the type of user that's there. We've our building that's downtown, where we have our restaurant, we took a long time to figure out exactly what type of use would be there that didn't require any cars to come to it, that made sure that the neighborhood people wanted to use it. And so that's what we envision here, but part of that process is talking with you about what kind of uses you want and you would walk to so that we can go out and find them.
Please.
I have a question. If I understood it correctly, there's 18 units of housing in 2 floors. And so I would imagine the parking that's there is also for those 18 units. No, it's not for those 18 units. Okay.
No, it is for the 18 units, but the 18 units could also be 9 units before it's over. Those 18 are drawn as small as they could possibly be, so there won't be 19, but there might be something less. The parking on the site now is 45 cars. So that will be shared by the residential and the retail.
Okay, and the loading dock is where?
The loading dock
For the co-op is where now?
Well, we look forward to working with the co-op to find out where to put the loading dock.
We said it was a starting point.
It's a starting point. Part of
Okay,
the.
I would recommend that be a very major. That's a very major
I'm sorry,
concern of
just because we've got people behind you,
I
we're going to have to hurry up.
I have another question. It's been a problem in the Takoma Junction area to attract commercial space, and so what you're suggesting is to build a sort of a monumental, a visual attraction, and a sort of Bethesda-like 3-story building with a pedestrian mall. And I'm wondering, what is your solution to bring in the rest of the community, which is much more kind of one might say sort of a low rental commercial area around that. And how do you see merging that and acknowledging that and trying to bring that into the project? Thanks.
Thank you.
I would say, just so that we're clear about scale, the scale of this building is more akin to the scale of the firehouse. I mean, it's not a big building. It's not something astronomical. The mall, in my mind, as the way I heard you say it, would be more akin to pedestrians on the sidewalk. I mean, that's what will happen. And as far as the retail is concerned, we think that taking advantage of the great reputation that the co-op has, working with them, supporting the way for them to expand, is a beginning step, and then to make all boats rise. And I think that as something begins to achieve a critical mass, and I'm suggesting the co-op to the fire station would be a good first step, then more and more will happen. But you could talk about, or you could talk about.
One thing I would say about Tally, the restaurant that Community 3 owns, is that these were all dilapidated buildings when they went into that. Tally was developed, and restaurants on both sides then started to open up So it fed a greater community need that then started to have a catalytic effect, and that's the same concept I think Grant expressed to us in coming for the design.
Thank you.
So my question concerns parking. I know we don't want to be a car-centric community, but I notice a lot of people are still driving these days. And the existing parking lot has 54 spaces in it, and those spaces serve the entire district. So my question is, how will your proposed development provide any parking services, or if so, how many spaces will be available for the rest of the district to use, which we are now understanding would be an expanded district with the additional retail or co-op function. And grocery stores generally involve cars after you get more than a quarter mile away.
Can I start this? Give you time to think?
Sure.
Okay. The way we understand it, there's 18 plus 16 spaces that the co-op in its current size feels that are comfortable for their use. There's no doubt that some of the spaces of those 45s will be used for the retail coming and going. How it's worked out for people coming and going that's your job.
Is a challenge. I mean, I won't beat around the bush about it. I mean, there's always a delicate balance between providing too much parking, and which encourages people to drive because there's parking spaces to be there, and providing not enough parking so that people don't know where to park. On the other hand, providing no parking encourages people not to drive and to potentially walk. I'm not saying that one side or the other is correct, but there needs to be a balance in the middle, and I think through the process that we go through here as we refine it, we'll try to come up with that balance. I don't know that there'll be a number that will be right. I mean, in every development we've done, we've started one place and moved a little this place and tried it that place, and we'll just have to work together to figure it out.
So just to follow up to make sure, are there any spaces under the building that would be set aside under your vision for the use of other businesses or customers of other businesses elsewhere in the district?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, my name is Mike Tabor. I'm one of the farmers who grows food for the co-op. And I was going to offer you each an apple. Maybe I'll do that.
Oh, great.
Honor of the Jewish New Year and a significant form of produce to show you how good the produce is and how it's sold at an affordable price at the co-op. I can't envision, I was in the other room looking at the plants, I can't envision an 18-wheeler, which a lot of the delivery vehicles are, getting into that space. I can't even envision a 6-wheeler, 16-foot conventional truck getting into that and getting out. How, I know you think maybe it could be worked out, but how would you enable that to happen?
It's a great question. We need to work. Part of it is that we need to understand the operation of the co-op, and we need to do that as a partner, and that hasn't happened yet, and that has to happen with whoever that's selected. It's going to be challenging. I don't deny it. Whether it has to be on the other side of the building or whether it has to somehow come up on the curb on certain times, I don't know. I don't know the answer. So all I can say is we have to figure it out.
Just keep in mind, even with the present space, it's difficult sometimes for us to get in and out.
Yeah.
And to take away that present space, I just don't see it being possible.
The one thing I would add, our firm has designed something like 15 grocery stores at the base of residential buildings. We just opened the Swift Safeway in Petworth, the Social Safeway, the Giant at 360H in Northeast, a number of projects. All of them we have to work these kinds of circulation and servicing problems out, and I'm confident that we'll work it out with the partnership.
Thank you.
I have an idea. Okay.
I
We don't have to go through it. Thank you.
Have these been washed?
Now, I want to make sure you.
Man of your word.
I want to make sure you give apples to everybody. Now, you got to give apples to everybody.
I would assume so.
My name is Lorraine Pearsall, and I'm with Historic Tacoma. I think I saw our logo up there in your presentation. And I'm here to tell you that I think a 45-foot building is way too big for the Junction. And scaling it off the fire station, which is a public building, is really wrong because our commercial and residential in Old Town area is very low scale. And so what I see is a humongous Bethesda-looking building that's absolutely not compatible. And so I think you'd have a great deal of trouble going forward the Historic Preservation Commission. And my question to you is, what would you do if the Historic Preservation Commission took a floor off your building? Would it be viable for you to do this development? Because I will tell you it's very possible, and we'd certainly lobby for it because it's way too big. So what would you do?
Thank you.
I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I don't know that taking a floor off solves maybe what the issue is. It may be an answer, but it may not be the only answer. And I'd rather sit down and talk about it, try and figure out a way that we can make something work, whether it be 3 stories in a lower building or whatever it is, or set back further, or change the massing, so that we can have a win-win strategy instead of just cutting off the floor. So
one of the beauties of working with communities is that we get to hear lots of voices and lots of opinions, and that's what we're looking forward to. And I think what we've tried to say is this is a concept. It's something that as a team, I think that we're committed to doing, and we hope we're the partner that you want to work with to go forward to figure that out.
Thank you. We've got this will be the last question.
All right. Hi, my name is Steve Dubb, and I was on something that was called the Takoma Junction Task Force, which was in 2011. And so I'm curious, because I haven't heard it come up yet, if that report was read, responded to, informs your work. And, there were some interesting parts that were done in that, including community soundings. I think residential development came in at about 8% being interested, more residential development. About 40% wanted better pedestrian experience. There were, business development was about 30%. So, there was a fair amount of community intercepts, community meetings. Is this report that, took about 18 months and about 20 volunteers' time at all informing the development proposals, yours, and I'm, curious about the other responses too, in terms of how you've gone about this process. And, so there's been a lot of community engagement, if you will. I'm just curious as to whether this is informing the proposals here today.
I'm familiar with the report. I've read the report. We actually, you were part of the report itself. You had 2 colleagues that were part of it as well. There
were multiple people.
There were multiple people. We met with a couple of people early on that had been part of the report to have them decipher what the report said to us, and so I think we heard it. I know that I believe that the report wasn't adopted, so I can't speak to whether it was part of the city's requirements or not.
It was made available to all the offers, and it is on our website. Yeah.
So we did look at it, and we. Oh, yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We made the document available, and it's processed.
So we did read the document, and we took what we thought was in the document and started with this vision.
Could you say something about how what you read out of that and how you adopted it?
Well, it's. I would say from a broad standpoint, okay, we took making a place to be the most important, and that was really our founding vision for what we made here. And so that really influenced what we're planning to do here, and at least a starting point. So I'd say that was the most important thing and of that document that I took. There's lots of different proposals in that document, and this is the proposal that we came with.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
These are great apples. Eat these apples. They are amazing.
We've got, again, a short transition time to go to Keystar LLC and Eco Housing. Again, for those folks who just came in, we want to make sure that you get a blue card, that you're able to write down all of your questions on that blue card. We have spillover seating that is both out in our lobby as well as in the Azalea room. We want to make sure that we collect all of these questions before you all leave so that we can make sure that those questions are available when we have our first public discussion of this, which will be next week. There are boxes at the doors for people to drop said blue forms in. We also have the same form available on our website, so you'll be able to go on our site and also log in questions there as well. I'm going to get out of the way so that the people can...
Keystar, right? Let's see what you call up, right? How do you want to do this? Do you want to read this, or just go on us? You can take it out and tell me. You want to do it a different way? Well, I want to talk about the co-housing. Sam just asked about senior co-housing.
We ready? Oh, okay. Hi, can everybody hear me? Hi, I'm Bruce Levin. This is Don Tucker and Michael Tucker, for those of you that don't already know us. We're partners in working on this project. I'm going to start off, our presentation's a little muddled, but we'll try to communicate our objective here. How do I change this? Oh, this one, yeah. Okay, thanks. All right. Yeah, that's it, we're done. Everybody can go. Okay, I want to start off talking about our team and what we've done here. So for better or for worse, we're actually a group that has actually, for 15 years, been working in Takoma, D.C., and Maryland, and not unfamiliar territory. Collectively, Don's experience started with the development of Takoma Village, which I think delivered in 2000. For those of you that know it, on 4th Street. I'm going to see if I can use this. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. Is that working? All right. So, one more. Sorry, folks. There we go. That's Takoma Village on 4th Street. That is a 42-unit co-housing community that is owned, condominium ownership. This is Eastern Village in Silver Spring, developed by Don. This is an affordable housing community that we're developing together, adjacent to the Takoma Metro Station on the DC side. And not far away is 3 Tree Flats in the Petworth neighborhood, which has a ground floor clinic and an affordable housing community, mixed income. Both are mixed income communities above. Closer to home, I own a building at 7001 Carroll Avenue that I originally undertook as a redevelopment opportunity, and after a very lengthy, expensive process with the community, we didn't develop it. We redeveloped it. And we're populated by all locally owned businesses, some of which are based in Tacoma, or residents of Tacoma. And for those of you who don't know it, we have an Ace Hardware on the ground floor, and I think I've seen it in some of our tenants, so don't be insulted if I don't list you all here today. I was involved with the financing of Cedar Crossing, the currently under development Takoma Central, the Gables project. We also brought a lot of tenants to Takoma in addition to the ones in our building, and been active with other tenants. Trove Furniture was a group that I brought to the community, as well as Ace Hardware that I mentioned, and a number of office businesses and other types of businesses. So we've been in the trenches here when people talk about, how are you going to get tenants here? How are you going to do that? We haven't brought Starbucks. We haven't brought groceries, Safeway grocery stores. We brought locally owned and operated businesses to the community and kept them here. I don't think I've had anybody that's gone out of business, except for one store. I will say they did go out of business, but we worked with them and replaced them with another local business. So collectively, we develop affordable housing primarily and mixed-use communities in the Washington metropolitan area. Don and Michael are also the architects on the project, and I think we know a lot about what the community does look for, and it is a very rigorous process. I want to show a little bit about, let's see, we'll start with, I think we'll go right to our site area. There we go. I want to just go to the building ground floor plan. So a lot of things that were brought up, we have the benefit of having heard them, but we have met with a lot of different stakeholders already. So we've met with the co-op repeatedly. In fact, I had my first meeting with the co-op, I think, 9 years ago on this subject. And I'm glad we're here today. We are also working with the Takoma Children's School, as other applicants are, or working with the co-op as mentioned. We also have a co-housing group that we're working with that Don will talk about in further detail. And so our concept is we're going to have ground floor retail, hopefully to integrate with the co-op. So we have an expansion here. We have some, and this, like everyone else has said, this is this could be retail, this could be live work. We're not sure yet. This is space that we've designed to the requirements of the Takoma Children's School. I just want to get right to some of these key questions. This is ground floor parking, which is open to, it's public parking. So it wouldn't be restricted to the co-op or any other tenant. Loading, we haven't figured it out yet. It's a very hard question. We're going to figure it out. We'll get right to it. So when you ask, where do all the residents live? We're planning 24 to 26 co-housing units, and that parking will be below grade. So there'll be plenty of parking for those that live here. Traffic questions, we know it's a very difficult intersection, live it, here all the time, know it. We have to solve those problems as well. The exact number of units we'd have at most would be 24, 26, likely fewer. So we'd have, our plan is actually since original submittal, because of the zoning rewrite during our plan, has changed. Works a little better here. Okay. We're not going to probably have these units over here. We're going to lower the building, make it smaller. This is a common courtyard that would provide, it's also a green roof. That would also be, if we're lucky enough to have a Takoma Children's School, would provide a dedicated play area for those children and any residents of the building. And that's the third floor of the building, which these are the wings that would probably come down right here. Most of that, we just can't build that many units with the zoning rewrite. And we'll use, we'll have a green roof and a green courtyard. Just interestingly, we're doing a project just down the street on the DC side of Tacoma Metro Station. We have a green roof. We have solar preheat hot water, common hot water for the building. So we do these things not just because they're the right things to do, but they also make economic sense and they're consistent with the type of principles we're trying to maintain. Let's see. We'll go back here. And that's the concept. Again, these are, like everyone else says, these are concept plans. We're trying to figure out what we can do, what we should do. I want to just focus on these wings that are going to come down at least a floor right here. So bring the scale of the building in the back down. And I do want to talk about, we have no plans to develop the residential lot on Columbia, that would be preserved as park. We wouldn't encroach on that at all. So this is a good perspective from the street, really coming up towards the building. Ground floor retail seating areas, just really think takes the elements of existing architecture in the community, reflects them in a building. We're trying to really respect what's here already, as we've done. My building down the street on Carroll Avenue has a limestone facade and brick, be similar type of brick, limestone, those types of materials that are already being used here. Some contemporary flair, little accents here and there, but this is really a design study. We don't know what we do. Some siding, punched openings, which is very important. Traditional windows. It's a big part of the residential tradition here. That's our parking entrance. So we would have all of our ground floor parking for the commercial and retail would enter there, and we have other design elements to show you, but we're going to switch over and talk a little bit about co-housing. And then really, I think, I think those of you that know us, we've done a lot here. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. I think everyone has a lot. Do you want to talk about
it? Howdy. So co-housing is an inclusive way of building a neighborhood where the future residents actually get together and instead of buying the sausage off the shelf, they help make the sausage. And as Ann Zabaldo, who's back in the room, would say, it's the old-fashioned way of building neighborhood and community. And our experience with co-housing in Takoma Park at Takoma Village was that we found a site that was an infill site that hadn't been used for quite a few years. There were junk cars parked on it. There were a couple of kind of far-fetched ideas about the use of the site before we got there, so it made what we were doing look reasonable. And we organized, with Ann's help, we organized a co-housing group around that site. And with their input, we designed a community and built a community. And so it's a way of making a very strong neighborhood that's a very, by definition, inclusive process. We've actually already had 2 organizing meetings for Takoma Junction. And it was a way of not only seeing, the interest in co-housing at this location, but also getting input from the broader community. We did read the task force study and the concerns about pedestrian use at the junction. Many of the things in that report we share, but also a lot of those issues and concerns of the neighborhood, like preserving the trees at the back of the site, were raised at these 2 organizing meetings that we held at Takoma Village. Previously, as Bruce said, we've already reached out to other potential users, and so we embrace eco-housing is about collaborative community building, and environmental design group is very much has a history over 40 years of including the end user into the design process and listening to the not only the user but the surrounding community and designing contextual solutions. So we welcome the process. It's the process that we like to go through. We have quite a bit of experience, as Bruce pointed out, in working in this community and have, I think, a good sense through both the task force report, the way the RFP was structured, and the input that we've received to date from the community to things that people want to see here. But we know this is the beginning of a long process, and we look forward to being part of it.
just want to touch on the community benefits. We have a slide on that as well. A little dense, but we did address some of these things very specifically. Just by example, we were cognizant of these, and we are focused on 2 nonprofit enterprises taking the majority of the retail space. Also, we would obviously the required MPDUs would be built, but we would in addition increase our affordability for the community to no less than 20%, so the balance would be workforce housing. So we get pretty specific, but we're happy to share all of this. We're going to have a positive impact environmentally with reduced stormwater runoff. In addition, through the co-housing community, we want to offer a public space in the common house that could also be used for community engagement, as for art. Capital bike share, parking we talked about. Then on the business side, we're going to add retail to the community. Traffic we know is an issue. We're going to add additional patrons of the co-op and other businesses. If we have live work, we'll have additional people working potentially from their home. And lastly, I think we do know a lot about the historic context. I'm sure Lorraine will educate me further, but I realize it's a process. She knows that we do engage in the process, but I think we for a first or second cut, we do understand. We also, but on another subject, we have talked repeatedly and met with the owner of the adjacent automotive shop and have a framework and that site is included in our proposal. At this time, we really actually like the Healy's aesthetic, and we think what it brings to the streetscape isn't something that we can improve on. So we wouldn't have we wouldn't be inclined to do anything, although I've had a number of discussions with that owner as well. So let me see if we have. I think that's really all we've got, and we'll. Just one thing on the design and public engagement process. These are the things we have done, and we would do, and have done before here. And so we do understand, different stakeholders, the neighborhood around the building, the site. The business owners, the city, the county, the Historic Preservation Office, Historic Takoma. There are many, many stakeholders, and we're experienced with having that iterative process and generally having, I think, good results. So, should we throw it open to questions? Oh,
Just
Mike,
add
you want
one
to add
additional
something?
point. I'm Mike Tuckworth, EDG Architects. We really want to raise the bar on this project in terms of sustainable design objectives, and it's something that you'll see in a lot of our work, but we've worked on a number of LEED projects, but even going beyond LEED, we're interested in passive design, we're interested in solar hot water, and we do it regularly on every job that we can. So that's really one of the primary goals for this project.
They get the award for being under time. That's fantastic.
There you go.
Bruce, I'm going to give you this back.
Thanks.
We'll head right into questions.
It wasn't clear to me from your presentation with the elevation and the plan view that you were incorporating an adjacent business. So if you can just point out how that works on your elevation and your plan view.
Well, I can show you. Maybe I can answer it right here. That is Healy's, and so we're not incorporating that. And this area here is where where Takoma Auto is, right there.
You can also see the co-op on the far end, and the idea there is to create sort of a pedestrian nook where where the retail meets the co-op.
We think that keeping the co-op scale is important in the transition on Columbia, and also retaining that surface parking there.
Is the second driveway the recessed area?
Sorry, sir. Are you?
I'll answer that. That is the residential parking, which is below grade.
I'm going to go that side.
Thank you. I want to thank all the firms for their thoughtful presentations. There's a lot of confusion in the community, and I'm sorry, but I guess this question is really for the city manager, Kenner. And if you could just explain why the co-op's proposal is not being presented, and if I heard their application may not have been complete. And if that's the case, we're just wondering if it's possible, given the co-op's important role in the community, to give them an extension to complete the proposal.
Yeah. I can answer many of those questions. So it's not that the co-op's proposal was not complete. That is not true. It was not just the co-op's proposal that did not make the final round. There were actually 3 proposals that did not make the final round. All of the proposals, and there were 7 of them, were evaluated on the same criteria. So we had vision, we had the ability to finance the project, and we had development experience as the same criteria that was applied to all of the offers that were there. As we mentioned in the press release, we very much feel like the co-op is an important part of the expansion of the junction. We have specifically tried, both in the debrief with the co-op that we had, to express that we think that they're important and we want them to be a part of anything that happens in the future. In addition, before we had the offers tonight to present, we specifically asked them to talk more about how they would incorporate the co-op into their proposal. So I think that there still is very much an opportunity for the co-op, and I'm hopeful that you hear that throughout all the presentations that were made this evening, that the co-op still very much is an important component to what's happening going forward. Other than that, we're still in an active solicitation process, and so I don't want to go too much into people's proposals. There was proprietary information that was provided to the city as it relates to that. I know that some offers themselves are providing information about their own proposals, which is totally fine. But that's sort of the evaluative criteria that the city went through to make its selection in terms of its finalists.
Good evening. Thanks for being here. So you mentioned the loading dock for the co-op was a difficult issue to wrangle. And it seems to me that having a structure for a loading dock as well as the area to turn around an 18-wheeler is a significant issue that could impact the fundamental structure of your plan. So that being said, given that you worked with the co-op, starting from 9 years ago and extensively since then, why has there been no loading dock in your current plan?
I just want to correct. I met with the co-op first time 9 years ago. I've been working with them, and we couldn't incorporate every option, so we're looking at different options, and we couldn't. I can't completely answer your question because the process has been very lumpy at best. So, and I don't want to explain someone else's process, but for us, we have tried to figure it out, and actually. We had to look at this as a proposal that with the hope to integrate, but we can't compel anyone to do anything with us. In addition, we have a lot of flexibility in our plan, but we're not at the point where if we said, hey, we want to go forward together, this is a design, conceptual analysis, we could say, okay, we're going to look at a lay-by. We're going to look at changing our building configuration, more underground. I mean, there are many possibilities, but we couldn't figure it out because we don't know completely what the co-op's plan is, and so that would be something we would, if selected, we would finalize at that point. So.
Okay. I appreciate that. As a real quick follow-up, wouldn't it make sense to display some alternatives in this presentation?
Well, we didn't. Truthfully, we had too many alternatives, and we don't know what's viable yet because we don't know if we have, to be very frank, if we have a partner with the co-op in doing it. So, I mean, we would hope to. And then what we think is possible and practical and cost-effective is not known because we have to go through a process. I'm not being evasive. It's really sitting down together and saying, okay, we want to do this together. Here's what option A costs, option B costs, option C costs. Here's what's viable. Are we willing to reduce the size of other aspects of the building? Are we willing to put more parking underground? It's just, it's what everyone is willing to do in that discussion. So that's why we haven't proposed anything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a clarifying question. You said that 12% of your units would be for people making less than 70% of AMI. What's the AMI for this area?
It is I think a family AMI is $107,000 a year.
Okay.
That's for a family of 4.
And that's a federal marker. That's
right. not their
It scales up and down based on family size.
I do have that same question about where where would there be space for a tractor trailer and another tractor trailer waiting? I mean, it's just not apparent. Even if you underground is probably not workable, very expensive, take up a lot of room. If there could be a way of getting a tractor trailer in there, where would you put the second truck waiting to unload? And I guess I have another question as a resident of Takoma Park as well as a farmer. This really does speak to a very upscaling of the neighborhood. And the co-op right now is actually very affordable. The food sold at the co-op. I mean, the apples I bring there are $1.69 a pound. At the farmer's
Sir, I apologize. I want to make sure we've got questions. So you asked the first question about the turnaround. Is there another question?
So that, and this does speak to the possibility of really increased costs for the co-op, so that the food would be less affordable.
Ma'am, I think that's a great point, and that's actually what I was just speaking to with the other gentleman. And I will say we have direct experience here. And with addressing these loading problems, Ace Hardware is a much larger store. It's 10,000 plus square feet. And I'm not suggesting that's an existing historic building. We don't have any good loading options. So they've been able to have a successful business here. And because of where they're located, they have an affordable rent, and they make it work here. Even though it's one of their lowest volume stores, not suggesting it's not a good store for them. So there's so many facets to what you say, and I'm not disputing any of it. It's trying to figure out how to be. We're not trying to build the Taj Mahal. So we're trying to build something that works for everybody. We have 2 nonprofits as our core tenants, plus a residential component with a large proportion of affordable or workforce housing. We can't build something that's not affordable. So I agree with what you're saying, so we just have to figure out how to make it work. We might not be able to get the perfect solution. That's just the nature of any urban redevelopment. So,
thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name's Marcus Jones. I'm a relatively new transplant resident to Takoma Park, but I have 2 questions. What exactly is co-housing? What does that mean? The second question is you have experience with the commercial side, and you've seen the redevelopment and kind of the activity that's going on with other parts of Takoma Park. It's been mentioned these other commercial buildings are underutilized. What do you see from your experience in the community as some of the key aspects to creating a vibrant, kind of a place that, as those guys said, a place that I'd want to go? I use the co-op, but the question is, what do you see as those key components, and how are you incorporating that into your design?
Well, I'll answer the first part about co-housing, and I may have to ask Ann Zabaldo, who's the nation's foremost expert, or one of them, in co-housing, to chime in on this as well. But it's co-housing's origins are in Denmark, but there's been a movement here in the U.S. for about 25 years or so. But what's different about it is that the people that live there are actively involved in designing and developing the community that they live in. So it's end user driven instead of building it and hoping that you hit the market. People come to the table and they work with you to design a tailor-made residential community that they then live in. And in addition to, one of the characteristics of co-housing is that it's pedestrian-oriented. The car is relegated to the periphery. It's pedestrian-focused. It tends to be very green. The projects that if you look at the projects that are built nationally, there's several hundred of them, and they tend to be very green. They're diverse communities. They're inclusive. Project that we did at Takoma Village, we designed and marketed to the affordability of the people that came to the table. And in the case of Takoma Village, about 70% of the residents were workforce housing incomes. So it's an inclusive way of building a community.
Thank you.
On the commercial side, as I mentioned, we've got a lot of direct experience here, bringing tenants that bring reflect, I think, the values and the needs of the community and help enliven and complete the streetscape. We've had success. And I do want to differ with one thing, actually. The Junction is a very desirable place to be. And, for example, Spring Mill Bread is coming to the Junction. One of the reasons some of the buildings have been vacant is, for a host of reasons. I've worked on many of them. 2 were contaminated and were being remediated. Had been a dry cleaner. Another had been storage for the owner, and that's changed hands. So I do think the opportunities. I've had many tenants over the years that have wanted to locate in the Junction. We haven't had availability. Historic Takoma had to redevelop their building there. So I do think there's great demand, the same reasons. But I think to the earlier gentleman's comment, it has to be affordable at the right price point to bring tenants that the community wants.
Thank you.
As a 25-year resident of Sycamore Avenue, and after looking at the 3 proposals, I can tell you how you're going to solve the problem with the loading dock, Sycamore Avenue. And that's not going to work. It's never worked in the past when the co-op first came there. The co-op is the only thing that has worked in that junction, and it works very well. So with all these buildings that are taking up the space, even though you're including their expansion, you're killing them because there's not parking, there's not places for them to unload the trucks. And as you use the example of Ace Hardware, they bring 1 truck in. They don't bring in 15 trucks. They bring 1 truck to unload. So if you guys succeed in building any of these buildings, the co-op's going to be gone. And the only thing that's worked in that area is going to be gone. So the truck will not work on Sycamore Avenue. They tried it. Thank you.
I apologize, ma'am. I want to make sure we've got enough questions. I want to make sure we have enough. I apologize. I want to make sure we have enough time for all the questions. Excuse me, ma'am. There were people that were waiting. 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 Please, ma'am.
I guess my question is probably more for the city. I don't understand the idea of wanting to put a school on this location, putting young children here next to a very busy, trafficked street. Why?
So the city is not in our solicitation.
It wasn't a city requirement.
It was not a city requirement. The city actually had no requirements for any residential, commercial, or other non-uses. We said it has to be consistent with zoning only, and so we allowed for the development partners to propose back potential uses.
I'd like to address that as well.
It seems like a terrible place for a school.
So one of the features of the design that we might have just sort of skipped over and not stayed with as long as we should have, but the courtyard facing south is the intention of that space is sort of a landscape community garden that would provide safe, open space for the school. So this is Office Street. This is particularly with the school in mind. It was part of their program requirements, and we've done this sort of configuration on a number of projects where we're essentially creating a private space that's safe. It's away from the street. It creates eyes on the ground in terms of residential units that have some visibility over it for safety reasons. So it was a consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Pearsall of Historic Tacoma. A few quick questions here. Bruce, how tall is the building? Give me your heights, your various heights.
Is that the peak here? Is that like 45? 40?
Yeah, under 50 feet, 46 feet, I think.
So another 45-foot building?
Yes, Lorraine.
Well, one that's actually getting shorter in the rear now, though, because of the FAR issue that we mentioned. Yeah.
So yet another 45-foot building. That looks like Bethesda with the way it's built out. Also, actually, I would say maybe DC, because DC has the generous bottom floors. So you're really getting a 4.5-story building made to be look like it's a 3-story building, which is still monumental. So.
Well, it actually steps down to 2 stories in some places along the street. Yes.
You'll have to show me
So
where
it steps up and down.
My eyes are bad.
Just one sec. Just because on your comment about the ground floor, one of the issues which was brought up about bringing tenants to the Junction is they don't have conventional space opportunities. So this gives them this does meet the types of requirements that a broad cross-section of tenants need. They do need some clear ceiling height, and they do need glass in order to
It looks
engage
like
with
the
street.
DC requirements. I know you guys
no, I
work
think-
a lot in DC,
No,
so
that's
I
Main
just
Street,
thought.
Tacoma. We have
Oh.
storefronts just like that in my building.
Oh, okay.
Plate glass windows.
Okay.
Just like that.
Okay. But, you know,
14%.
not quite with those window
So I want to make sure
proportions, but-
we get to
Bruce,
questions.
my other question for you is the number of residents you have there. Could you just clarify that? Because I saw 26. And when I kind of counted up your spaces, I don't know if you're going to have some double.
I can answer your
floors.
question. As I mentioned in my presentation,
Yeah.
we submitted prior to the zoning rewrite. And the
So you
zoning-
shrunk it, or
Yeah,
you made the apartments bigger?
No, we just shrunk it. But our total square footage has gone down by,
Okay.
I think, 9,000 square feet.
So how many? So you don't have 19 apartments on the third floor and 18 on the second.
No, as I said, we have 26 or
Okay.
less total.
Total. Okay. And I guess.
Lorraine, this got to be your last question. I want to make sure we've got
This is totally
time.
my last question. How is it? We're hearing that things yet need to be finalized. So my question is, how is it that these proposals really went forward with such major incompatibilities with the co-op's functioning, which seem to have been the major priority of this effort? And I'm hearing tonight that, once we're finalized, we'll work it out. Well, that's not good enough.
I think the
Do
answer
you-
to that question
Yeah.
is that what we've asked for tonight are some design concepts. We've got a long process ahead of us to try to refine the proposals, because what we're going for, what the city's going for, what the residents expect is the best overall value for the project if there's going to be a project here. So the idea right now is to ask as many clarifying questions of the existing proposals that we have to try to
Okay.
get them a little bit more finalized so that we can see what a more finalized project would look like. Lots of the questions that we've received tonight are repetitive, which is in some way good because it underscores some of the questions that we will be asking back to the responders.
I'm going to urge you to invite the co-op to present their proposal.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So one clarification before I ask a question. When the co-op came in, however, 15 years ago, we negotiated with them, everybody, that they would not put the loading dock that was on the Sycamore side, that they would move it to the other side. And that was the condition upon which they operated. So all of the applicants should understand that was the understanding, with huge amount of coordination with the neighborhood association in the city. So, and then I guess my question is for the city. We have 4 options here to consider. Is there a 5th option of no development?
There's always an option as it relates to that. So the city solicitation specifically says that the city can take all of these options under consideration. They can work with some even middle strategies between them, or it could decide to not do anything.
Okay, well, I guess I think those of us living on Sycamore that are closest to this, we would encourage that. I think all of the main comments and question we have is how to scale down the site from 3 to 4 stories to a lower development that is more fitting with Healy on one side and the co-op on the other.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Roger Schlegel. I also served on the Junction Task Force. My question concerns pedestrian safety. And one of the things we noticed when we looked at this problem of the junction is that we have a lot of streets come together, and we also have a driveway that comes out that's not signaled. So your design actually adds a second driveway. It maintains a driveway at a point that's just a few yards short of the actual signaled intersection. So we're actually going to have 2 possible left turns into those driveways and 2 possible left turns out of those driveways. And sorry about the long preface, but those are the most dangerous sorts of turns from a pedestrian or cyclist standpoint. And I wonder whether your firm had considered having a single entry point that would, say, aligned with Carroll Avenue northbound, or whether you had to rule that out for some reason. I guess that's a question that could be given to some of the other teams, too.
Just write that down. That'd be good.
Thank you. We didn't rule out anything. I think what we tried to do was we were working with a cost structure, so we're trying to figure out how do we there is a curb cut already in these approximate locations, and I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. And the traffic management is a big challenge, but we were looking at since we're going to have public parking on the first level, on the ground floor level, we wanted a separate entrance for residential parking. in the ground floor from a security and usage standpoint, because that's really open parking there, both for pedestrians to access and for cars to go in and out.
And I think the pedestrian, controlled pedestrian traffic and how people get across is really a huge concern here. I mean, there has to be traffic calming, and there has to be a real pedestrian way across that intersection. It's got to slow down. It's got to feel safe and be safe for pedestrians.
Thank you. Thank you, Keystar and Eco Housing. We have our final proposal. We're right almost on time. It is a neighborhood development company. Again, for those folks, while we do a transition here, who just came in, we want to make sure you write down all your questions on the blue cards. We have boxes in the back and in the side here to drop those cards. We also have online a way that you can submit additional questions. We want to make sure we get all the questions, even if you ask it at the podium, so that we can give those questions to council for consideration.
Just slide control is. Yeah, you can use this one. All right. Okay.
How does it advance?
Here, this right here.
Okay. And that's the pointer? Doesn't work. Just advances. Okay. Okay.
Can everyone hear me? Can I get started? It's okay to get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having our team here. My name is Adrian Washington. I'm the president and founder of the Neighborhood Development Company. We're very excited about the opportunity you've given us to present for this exciting site and this exciting town, and I can tell from the questioning that it's an exciting audience. So we are very excited to get going. So what we're going to do in our short time here is try to answer really 3 questions for you all. First, we're going to tell you who we are. Then we're going to tell you what we're proposing and why we're proposing. And like everyone else, we really want to emphasize that this is our initial cut and that we intend to solicit lots and lots of input before going forward. And then finally, how we're going to do it. So a bit about the who. Neighborhood Development Company is a company I founded 15 years ago. We developed about 500, close to 600,000 square feet of real estate. We have 80 combined years of management experience. We've done over $200 million of investment. Part of that is affordable housing. We developed over 156 units of affordable housing and over 500 total units developed. I'm going to give you some examples of our projects, and let me tell you I'll get started. This is the residence on Georgia Avenue. It was a public-private partnership with about a $28 million project. It's sustainable with the green use. It's mixed use. On the ground floor was a Yes Organic Market, which was really in a neighborhood where people thought that the residents wouldn't support this type of venture, and there really had been a food desert up until then, and it was really something that the community wanted, we believed in, and we got done. It has 72 apartments. The retail component is a little bit over 10,000 square feet. This is 3232 Georgia Avenue. Again, it's a public-private partnership, and that's something I want to emphasize is important. We have a long experience of working with governments, with communities, really complex projects that require a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of expertise, and this is an example of it. Again, it was sustainable. Again, it's mixed use. Our headquarters is here on the ground floor of it. It has affordable housing opportunities for members of the community, 69 apartments, about 11,000 square feet of retail, and it's something that as the other building, we're going to own for a long time, and it's an example of our commitment to the community. Now, these 2 projects I showed you, they're big buildings. We're not showing them because we're going to build a big building here. What we do want to show you is that we are capable of building much larger projects than this These are expensive, these are time-consuming, require a lot of investment, and so we did want to demonstrate that we have the capability to do the project that we're going to hopefully be selected as bring to your community. This is again a building that is not that attractive and not that representative, but we did want to show you the breadth of our experience and the breadth of our community involvement. This is 209 Upshur Street. It was a small project, about $4.5 million, 15,000 square feet, but we developed it as a charter school, and we worked hand in hand with the charter school. They had a vision, they had a dream, they had no money, they had no experience, they had no land. We partnered with them to create a charter school. We worked with them, but then their vision didn't work out. And so we had a building, and what we've done now is partnered with a daycare center. You can see they've started to decorate the site there, and we help bring them in, we work with them, we help get them financing. And so it's an example of kind of the breadth of development we do and the breadth of our commitment to the community. And finally, I'm going to show you a different type of project that we've done. It's a Nova Vitalis condominium. And this was a very interesting project. This was 40 units of building, and it was a very nice couple of buildings. It was a cooperative, and it was a group of people who had worked together and who really believed, and the neighborhood believed in this neighborhood of Columbia Heights before it became very popular. But when we got there, the co-op was failing. They were going out of business. They were near bankruptcy, and they really didn't know what to do. And so we banded together with them in a program we call Building Together. We developed a partnership with the existing residents of co-op. We helped save them from bankruptcy. We got them not only into a co-op, but into a condominium where they actually own their own homes. And these were people of very modest means. They were able to buy into a neighborhood that was going through gentrification, where prices were going through the roof, and they were able to buy in and to keep their homes, stay in the neighborhood, and it was really a success story. So again, it's an example of the development skill, the finances, the expertise we bring to it, but also our commitment to working with the community and to creating solutions that help people stay and help people live better lives. So now I'll bring up our partner, our architect, Suman Sorg.
Good evening. It's a real pleasure and honor to present our qualifications to you for this very important project. Our firm is located in Washington, D.C., and we are an award-winning architecture firm, and one of our most important parts of our firm is to do infill buildings in historic districts. And so I'm going to show you some in Washington, D.C. We also have worked in Montgomery County. We're currently doing the Good Hope Road new recreation center, and we did the new Crest Haven Elementary School, which was the first LEED Gold elementary school in Montgomery County. So our idea of infilling in historic buildings is to look at what's historic. This is a 16-unit condominium building on 10th Street in Washington, and to really figure out what makes these buildings beautiful, and that is their proportion, their relationship to height and scale, and their relationship to light and opacity and the materiality of these buildings. So here you can see a building that is actually reflective of the church and yet in a modern vocabulary, but steps down to lower scale buildings to the north. This is Katie's Alley, one of the most popular retail venues in Washington and Georgetown. It's a very, very narrow street or alley, and we designed retail on the ground floor and residential above. And each building here is different from the other in its design, yet the materials of these buildings are connected. This is a housing project in Capitol Hill, which is also in a historic district, but on district-owned land. This was a former DC public housing property that's now converted into townhouses and apartments. And again, you can see the mix of modern and historic elements, yet a sort of mannerist style of architecture that picks up on the rhythm of these buildings in Capitol Hill rather than imitate them. So we would employ a similar design process for this project. And the first thing that we do, of course, is to look directly across the street from us and in the neighborhood. So what we noticed right away is that the buildings are just 2 stories tall. So the tallest buildings around us. And yet they're individual. There's a certain width and height to them, and there's a definition to them that each one of them, although connected at times, is separated from the other by its color and or material. And that there's plenty of use of brick here as well. There's a lot of use of glass as well, and scale defining elements like canopies and in and out projections of the storefront. So as you'll see in our design, we have captured, and again, it's just a very initial design that we've done in the time that we had, but we would capture most of these details in our architecture as well for Takoma Junction. So I'll let Matt Davitt, who actually lives in Takoma but works in our firm, talk about the proposal itself.
Thank you, everyone. As Suman mentioned, I'm a resident of North Takoma Park, so I am very familiar with this image, just as all of you are. That's our site right there, and obviously that's the co-op on the left and the auto clinic on the far right. The big void in between is what we're all focused on here tonight. One other image that I want to point out, this is from Columbia Avenue. This is the back of the site. This is obviously the back of Co-op, and I want to just focus on the steep grade that everyone knows occurs as you go from the front of the building down to the wooded area in the back. And I'll explain a little bit later how we are treating that condition. This is our schematic site plan. We have Carroll Avenue here at the top of the page. The Co-op is here on the right, and this is our building. And the basic configuration that we're employing is that of an L shape. So we have one leg of the building here along Carroll Avenue, abutting the Co-op. So we have a continuous retail streetscape. You can also see here where we've angled this portion of the facade. That's to kind of bridge the gap between the existing building of the Co-op and also to provide something of a terminus for the leg of Carroll Avenue that goes up to the northeast. And then the other leg of the L runs north-south and runs basically alongside the Co-op. And the idea there is that that would provide the expansion space for the Co-op to expand into. One advantage of this configuration is that we should be able to use the existing curb cut for all of our vehicular traffic. So we are showing loading coming in here. We also have space for some surface parking here. And then here is the ramp down to the, we have a below grade level for parking as well. And now, as I had mentioned, the steep nature of the slope here, it actually provides us with an opportunity to use that lower level to actually have live space, which then daylights to the south. And so that, I think we would have, a number of windows on the south. There'd be a great connection to the existing wooded lot there, and the idea would be that that could be a potential location for the school. This is our kind of diagram of the lower level. So here's the parking area. That's that additional commercial space. That could also potentially be, stock space for the Co-op as well. It's not set in stone. And then we are also proposing an additional residential structure there on the R60 lot. This is the upper floor, again, the L configuration. And here we are proposing some residential area. Right now we're thinking 8 to 10 residential units. And then here in this sort of prime area that I mentioned before, we're planning for community-oriented commercial space there as well. This is our roof plan. We're planning for a green roof, and we're also planning on incorporating urban farming. which is something that we'll get into a little bit later in the presentation as well. And I also just kind of want to draw your attention to this sort of terracing effect that you can see on the south side of our proposal. You can see that better in this drawing. This is a cross-section through the building. So on the left side, we have Carroll Avenue, and you can see the low-rise, two-story streetscape there that we spoke about. And then on the back side, adjacent to Columbia Ave, you can see that the building continuously sets back as the building rises, kind of along with the hillside. So this creates some interesting terrace views, as well as it helps to reduce the perceived height of the building from the backside. These next two images are some conceptual renderings. Again, this is our first pass at it. So obviously this is Carroll Avenue here. We're looking at the front of the building. And I think you can really see some of the contextual. We've tried to incorporate some of the contextual elements that Suman had mentioned before, and had them influence the development of the design here. So that same idea of the individual units, the bays, the rhythm of the bays, that same width, 20 to 25 feet, the varied roof line, you can see how that works into our design. We have the same kind of protruding bays and recessed entryways, details such as awnings, a heavy use of brick, which we think is very appropriate. We think that this helps to contextualize this building. This is the same view, but now we're at street level, and you can see kind of that focal point here, which we're planning on using as the community-oriented commercial space. And you can see how here's the undulating roof line. I mean, we're really trying to activate the facade here, and to engage the pedestrian as they're coming up and down Carroll Avenue. And really the idea here is to create a Main Street type environment that we feel is compatible with the master plan vision for this site. As Suman had mentioned, we're very committed to sustainability in our practice. We do that as a matter of course, whether or not we're trying to meet any sort of LEED requirement. And we know that sustainability is very important to this community as well. So we feel that this project really should strive for LEED Gold as a level of sustainability. These are some of the sustainable strategies that we would look to incorporate in pursuit of that goal. I'm not going to go through every one of them now. But I do want to point out some of them because they kind of work in concert with the idea of using the roof as this sort of urban farming location. So elements like the green roof obviously would be incorporated. Rainwater collection would be a big part of that program, and that feeds into the idea of water conservation and stormwater management. So it all kind of ties together. And I'll let Michael speak a little bit more about that idea.
Thank you, Matt. Matt had mentioned our commitment to bring urban agriculture to the project. We've partnered with DC Freedom Farms. They are a commercial aquaponic grower, and the idea is they'll be located on site, and they're going to be growing fresh fruits and vegetables as well as harvesting fish through, it's like a nutrient tank. We think this more reaches sustainability at a larger level. It's not really associated with how the building functions, but it does get to growing locally and what have you. So I'm here to talk mostly about how we move forward from where we are, and I guess mostly if we're given the opportunity to work with you. So I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about the route we're going to take, but then I'm going to talk about what's going to happen along those routes. So what you can see here, it's a really elaborate diagram which we prepared. This was prepared for the City of Takoma Park. My intent's not to go through it all tonight, but what I want to do is highlight some of the elements. We'd encourage you, when it's posted on the website, to look at it and see what you think. So in total, identified in the green boxes, we see 11 opportunities. These are both opportunities that we're envisioning happening, as well as those that occur through normal public processes that are already established in the city and Montgomery County. What I want to do is focus on the first phase to give you an idea of what might happen. in these, I guess we're envisioning two different things happening. So the highlighted box is more of a formal decision-making process where we come together, make some resolutions. But I think what's more interesting that we envision happening is what you see in the top three boxes. So as a part of our initial phase, from where we are now, we envision meeting with the prospective tenants that were identified as partners, potential partners. We want to revisit discussions with the Takoma Junction Task Force members to make sure we're clear on everything that was outlined in the task force report. And then I think what's most interesting to me is this element of actually coming up with an approach to engage directly with the citizens about the future of the project. So right now it's just ideas. Took them from a useful resource here, the Community Planning Handbook. But I think what's important that we want to focus on is we want to focus on sharing ideas. We want something that's interactive, and we want something that's happening in the community so that as people are there, they can talk about the site, talk about what they'd like to see, and talk about what they do and don't like about what they've already seen. So, talk is cheap. So what we want to try and highlight is what we have done already. And so we want to walk you through an exercise that we went through as a part of preparing our proposal. So, these parties were identified, one of which is the shops at Takoma Park. We're just envisioning, as Matt mentioned, retail as a part of our project. So there was 5 parties identified, and unfortunately, when you combine their space, it didn't meet the permitted floor area, which is represented by the red line. So we had... these were identified through the website when the RFP was issued. There was no the city, yes. There was no requirement for us to participate. We took it upon ourselves to do so. So what we decided to do from that point is, okay, well, how do we solve this problem? So we started talking. And you start talking to people and you start hearing, well, what specifically do they need? And so what we did was disaggregate their space needs. And from there, what we were able to do is identify areas where we saw common ground, where we could actually work together to create shared space opportunities. And so, we sort of, I guess this is intended to represent, the combined spaces. And, I just to highlight the example of that is, all the parties wanted some sort of assembly space, space for school functions, a meeting or event space, or a performance space. So total that was 6,000 square feet. We figured we can get it into 3,000 square feet by sharing it, by everybody communally using it. So through that and some other mechanisms, we basically created a reduced shared space need. And when you take that and you add it with all the remaining needs from the individual users, we ended up with a match. So I think that represents how we like to move forward. I'm going to turn it over to Adrian, who's going to close this out.
We'll be doing a test on those circles after the exam. Okay. So first of all, thank you very much. I know it's very late, and I'm really impressed. I mean, we have presented to many communities of work, and to see the participation of the audience and the fact that you all have stayed here very late, it's very impressive, and it's made a real impression on us. But just to summarize, what we think is the advantage of our proposal, we have a developer that we believe has an outstanding track record that you can check, that you can see the projects that we've built, talk to communities that we've worked with. We have a cohesive team. We've worked with all these folks before. They have great experience. We have great experience. We collaborate well together. We have a very strong desire to work with you and to invest in Takoma Park, and we have the resources to make this project happen. We're excited to partner with the community tenant base. I hear, folks in the audience saying, why this tenant, why this not? And so we're learning, and we're going to talk, and we're going to do it. But we do, at the end, the project will not be successful unless we have tenants and users there that reflect the community, that the community wants, and that the community supports. And so we're very excited to do that. We've got an award-winning architect. I think you've seen some of their talent and some of their ideas and project, and that they have a strong record of both having design excellence, but also a strong record of working with the community and coming up with something everyone can agree with. And so in sum, we're committed to working with you over the long term. We know this project will not be something that, we're ready to go right away, but obviously it's going to take a lot of collaboration with a lot of people. We're in it. We're willing to work for the long haul because we think this is a great community, and we're committed to having a great project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neighborhood Development Corporation. Just also a very small point of clarification. The city did not require any developer to work with a specific tenant. We, at our orientation session, we actually had some tenants show up, and they were perfectly free to come and to make matches with other developers as they saw fit. So the city, the co-op, we wanted to make sure that there was an underscore around the importance of them in the junction. But to be clear, we did not require, and we cannot require anybody to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and start here.
Felt like I was looking at a Rorschach test there for a second with the dots. I don't mean to hit you guys with this unfairly and not the other guys, but I noticed the beautiful pictures we saw up here. None of them had any nasty Pepco power lines in front of them. Looked awesome. So I assume you guys have a plan to work with Pepco to underground those lines? And if not, maybe you should, because in my mind, that would bump your projects up a lot over the other guys.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Not sure there was a question there, but that's okay. Let's go over there.
I had a question. One of you said something about the back of the building and the school, there'd be space for the school to develop, and I wondered what that meant. If you guys were thinking of adding that in, if there was... So it wasn't clear.
Sorry about that. I can go back to that. Is that too fast? A little trippy?
We're getting dizzy now.
Okay, so this is kind of the... it's the lower level is where we were talking about as a potential spot for placing the school. So that's in this zone here.
Well, actually, in the building as you have it there.
Correct.
Oh, I see. So it wouldn't be an extra building. I was just...
No,
okay.
it's part of the building.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
And the play area?
We need to work that out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean that we have. That's why we're developing the terraces. I mean there are opportunities for outdoor play area.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, another Sycamore resident. I've lived on Sycamore Avenue for 36 years now. And I want to say to you and to really all the presenters tonight, very impressive. I mean, very serious proposals. If I were looking to develop a space to increase activity, to bring people into the neighborhood, to accommodate these kinds of activities, all four presentations, yours certainly included, I think really, an impressive job. But I guess my question, and perhaps it goes more to the city, is why are we bringing more activity into this neighborhood? The co-op came in about 15 years ago, and some of us were concerned. And in fact, it's brought a huge amount of new activity. But we love I shop there almost every day and love it. But there's no question that it's been a huge increase in the activity. It's created a lot of it's related to some of the traffic problems that you've heard about. That's why I think a lot of people are concerned about the co-op not feeling somehow slighted here, because that's there. The community has integrated itself with the co-op. It has contributed to this problem of more activity. And my question, perhaps it's to you, is when do we as a community get the chance to really discuss this very aspect as to why are we considering proposals to build structures, to bring in more residents, to bring in more businesses? When do we get to articulate what some of us feel is we want less activity? We want maybe a park. We want maybe a community garden. We want something that doesn't increase the problems we see.
So I think, let me try to answer that in two different ways. One is that I would say that part of getting to the answer to that question is what we're doing right now. I certainly know, and I've read the Takoma Junction Task Force report. There were lots of recommendations in that report. And some were for active uses of the site and thinking about the commercial district itself, activating that site. There were public facilities. There were all kinds of options. When we were back in October of last year, we talked about some of those options. There was sort of a status quo, which is to keep it where it is, think about public uses. the decision was made to move forward to at least see what other kinds of activity would be possible in this area. Again, the option to not do anything is always on the table, and that's part of this process. I will say that from what I've learned, the Junction location was purchased, by the city to try to make sure that it continued to revitalize, especially the commercial aspects of that area. And so this is an attempt to see if this is the right venue to do that. If not, there are other options that are available for the city. But we want to make sure, especially because in terms of a market process, there's only certain times where we can get some responses, and we thought this would be the best time to get those responses and bring it to the community to see if this is something they wanted to move forward with. I'm going to go over there.
Well, I'm also a longtime resident of Sycamore Avenue, and I noticed that every time we have an aerial view, you can see my house, and you can tell that my lawn needs mowing. But I did want to comment on one thing. Yours is the first of these four proposals that treats the Columbia Avenue side as if it were an asset instead of just a blank wall. And other than keeping the trees there, but I mean, you're actually using it as, and I wonder if you have developed an elevation for what it would look like on Columbia. I mean, Columbia is a really interesting and beautiful street. The existing forested area there is a real amenity value, and I think you're actually thinking about capitalizing on that, and that's pretty interesting to me, but I also wonder what it would look like.
We haven't developed any elevations for that yet, but I believe in buildings, but I also believe in gardens, and I believe in the environment around buildings. And so it'd be very important for us to make this more of a building that fits in that garden that exists now.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Pearsall with Historic Tacoma, and what is the overall height of your building from Carroll?
It varies. We're trying to have sort of a varied facade along the front, but it varies from 30 to 35 feet.
Okay. And I can't tell if you're encroaching on the green space. Are you actually coming down the hill? And I can't really tell from that what's happening.
Yeah.
It's a side profile, but I don't know what's happening toward Columbia. If you could, help me understand that.
So we are coming down the hill. We're basically aligning with the co-op there.
Okay, so you are eating into the
hillside.
hill there, hillside, and coming in. And final question: how many parking spaces do you? I might have missed that, but could you go over that again?
Sure.
I think it's 39 with above grade and below grade.
39 total.
Yes.
And what is?
Part of the reason for that is that we've minimized the amount of surface parking that we have here in order to allow for the maneuvering of the truck into the loading area.
Okay. Oh, so that's going down on the green space too a bit, right?
No, these are
the parking space.
Where is this? These are
Looks
trees which are actually overhanging the edge of the lot there. Okay. We don't have a survey yet, so we're not entirely. We don't know exactly where this line is, but the idea is that we'll work with what's there.
Okay, and so you have 10 spaces above grade and
I think there's 6.
30.
There's 6 above grade.
Oh, 6 above grade. Oh, 6 above grade altogether.
On the far left, that would be used for the actual truck to do its pivoting. I guess I don't know what you call it.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Steve Dove. I just a quick comment and then hopefully a question. So the quick comment is that there's sort of been this idea that task force report was so amorphous we don't really know what it said, and there actually is a 4-page summary and there's exactly 5 bullets on development. So I suggest there were specific recommendations from the task force. I don't think you have to religiously adopt those, but I think addressing them is important, and it did involve a huge amount of community engagement. So it wasn't just the 20 people on the task force, it was more than 100 people were interviewed and so forth. So that's the comment, and I'm happy to make the summary available if you haven't seen it. Hopefully you have. One question coming out of that, one of the things that we found were potential contamination issues in terms of the site. It was part of that lot was a former dump site. How do you address that in your proposal?
I think that the city did a phase 2 environmental evaluation based upon some of the previous uses, and we provided that information in Roswell.
We did. We did a phase 1, and following that phase 2 environmental site assessment. They're all on the city website on the page about the Takoma Junction. So that information was made available to all the applicants. It included 12 or 16 borings and testing.
And one thing I will say in support of our team is that we have worked extensively on dirty sites. We've done a lot of work in the district. We just built one of the projects I've shown you was built on a former gas station. We just worked on another project that also had sort of similar things. We were pretty experienced with both the remediation of it and also bringing resources. Maryland is a great state to develop in that they have hazardous waste tax credits and other programs. Are very progressive there. And so part of the expertise we would bring is to help bring in state, perhaps federal funds to help in that effort. And that would help us create a better project with the same economics.
Thank you.
So whenever I walk by the co-op on peak hours, the lot by Sycamore Avenue is frequently a point of congestion, and it gets very busy. And the overflow lot is typically the lot that's owned by the city on the opposite side of the building. My question is, during the phase of construction, which may be over a period of a year or more, how do you plan to accommodate the needs of parking and loading dock for the co-op during that time?
Very good question. I think that's something we'd have to work on. We did engage with the co-op and talk about their immediate loading needs, or not immediate. We talked about the objective of ensuring loading was provided in the future, but I think the logistics require us to have a dialogue with everybody who has a stake.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question about the roof and the farming that would happen there. So the size of that, and is it year-round? And how many, like the vegetables that are grown there, how many people does that typically support, something in that general sense?
We'd rather not speak to the specifics, but we didn't see the full roof being occupied. In terms of specifics, I can't tell you about the production yield, but I can say that based on our discussions with Freedom Farms, we'd probably use about half the roof. It's going to be under a greenhouse, and then as per the code, the zoning code, there'd be tanks somewhere as an accessory. It's kind of considered an accessory building somewhere on the site. So, where we fit it in is part of our design program, but we don't have it resolved yet.
Okay, but it would be year-round?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of discussion about sustainability of the proposals, and I think one of the comments, I'm a resident of Columbia Avenue, is the sustainability is, from a community perspective, I think, not solely the sustainability of the building, but the sustainability of the community itself. And so I think this is a very nice proposal, especially if you can find the right mix so that it actually enables residents of the community. There was a question about why are we doing this, and I think one of the reasons that makes Takoma great is we have walkable, metro accessible community, and we all love that, and we want to capitalize on that. And if this is done in the right way, sustainability should also include not only the building but the mix of tenants, so that we don't have to drive in our cars and we don't have to go to other communities, but can actually support and walk to an expanded commercial district. And so I applaud this proposal for thinking in those terms.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, thank you, Neighborhood Development Corporation Company. With that, amazingly, we are on time. Again, if you've got any other questions, please submit those into the bins over here and at the as you exit. Thank you for staying and listening, and hopefully it was helpful to everybody. The upcoming meeting, we will be meeting this upcoming Monday, September 29th, to discuss specifically that. Community meeting will be 7:30 here on Monday to talk specifically about, again, trying to get the clarifying questions together so that we can ask the developers. Thank you all very much.
I'm just going to put that last slide up.